go. Good evening. Hello. Welcome to another week of the Fashion Bites chat. One second. Just going to quickly pin this comment. Here. Okay, terrific. It looks like Dolly's already online, so let's get her on. Go. I'm Hillary, the founder of the Fashion Bites platform. We're here to support and nurture creative entrepreneurs, filling in the gap between what happens in real life and education. This is our way to connect, collaborate, and share. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much. We're delighted to have you today. If you could please tell us a bit about yourself.
Of course, thank you for having me. I'm Dolly Jones. I run a digital consultancy, Dolly Jones Limited, which I set up a couple of years ago, having left Conde Nast, where I'd been for 20 years. I'd run Vogue Digital in the UK for 15 years before then, prior to that, doing some work experience. I literally walked in from university and then did Vogue for 15 years and then helped run the digital team across the whole portfolio. So all of the titles, GQ and Glamour and Vanity Fair and House and Garden and on, before leaving a couple of years ago and setting up on my own.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so let's dive in. So I think that your title is creative strategist.
Yes, it's kind of cover all of that, isn't it?
Yes. What does that entail? How do you define your role?
Well, I think what I try to do is work with brands to really identify the brand stories that will best resonate with the audience they aspire to engaging with. And so I think traditional advertising was far more about sort of shouting about oneself as a brand, big pictures of products and just expecting people to know and want and understand. And somebody said to me once, and I can never remember who it is, so I'm really sorry that I always quote them without actually crediting them. But the fact is, you don't make any friends if you go to a dinner party and you only talk about yourself. And I think it's really true in advertising now, and because of the digital revolution and the opportunity that brands have to really interact with their audience and their customer, it's about identifying a really authentic brand voice, and then working out what the story should be. And it's about telling a story and an ongoing narrative with an audience to kind of draw them in and keep them with you. And another favorite quote of mine is one from Joan Didion, and she said, us humans, we tell each other stories in order to live. And I always say that to brands, like it's a really natural thing. This is how to really engage with other human beings.
Right. And does your work as a journalist, because you are a journalist as well, does that help you with this creative role?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's very much, I mean, at the time at Vogue, I wouldn't have said this, but you're very commercially aware, or I was commercially aware as a journalist at Vogue, because you're working with brands all the time and they really are very clear on the message that they want to give and the profile that they want to have in the fashion industry. So you have to learn what a brand is trying to say and then learn to translate that on the different platforms, to the different potential audiences.
Right. Now, of course, with any business, you would like to know how to measure your return on investment. How does that work with you helping the businesses? How would they measure it?
The first thing, whether you're working, on a one-off project with a client or whether you're doing a sort of wider, broader brand strategy, the first thing is to really sort of nail down what success is for them. So, do they want 1 million followers on Instagram, or do they want to sell 1 million handbags? Because while hopefully you can end up doing both, you need to prioritize their goals, and then you tell the story slightly in a different way, or you tell a slightly different story depending on what those goals might be. And it might be brand awareness to begin with, or it might be engagement on social media, or it might be straight sales. So, you know, you have to, and it's a difficult question to have answered sometimes. They just kind of want everything. And you have to really work out and force them to make a decision, prioritize.
Right, right. But and following on from the real content and engagement, how do you figure out, you know, your audience and where to find them and what the appropriate message is for that, whoever that audience is?
Well, it's so interesting, I think, even more so now than ever before, because there are these huge cultural conversations being driven massively by social media. And so it's listening and witnessing how people are interacting with, how audiences are behaving online, and seeing what those kind of trends are, what the big conversations are, and then working out how to combine your authentic brand message with those prevailing conversations. And it's not always easy. You don't want to just, you know, for the sake of it, be hashtagging what everybody tends to be hashtagging that day. You have to be brand appropriate. But in the early days of Vogue, I mean, I'm about 400 years old, so there's like social media, it was Twitter, no images on Twitter. It was just literally, you know, a few words. And we started to realize, however unhealthy this is now, that people were waking up and turning to their phone immediately. So we wanted people to wake up with us. So we started a hashtag called Today I'm Wearing. And I mean, luckily there were no images, because I would just lie and make up these amazing outfits. And so Today I'm Wearing, and it was way before Instagram and people doing outfit of the day and all of that kind of influencer stuff. Influencer wasn't even a thing. And so that was brilliant. And then a colleague of mine had a brilliant idea to do a hashtag fashion forecast. And every morning she'd check the BBC weather, and then she'd say, it's going to rain today, you know, I'm going to wear my Stella McCartney Mac. Again, it was a lie. And that really, really well as well. So it was helpful to people, because it was helpful to know the weather. And sometimes it's so annoying to work out what to wear in the morning. So if you have Vogue telling you first thing in the morning what they're wearing, it was like, you know, there was such a close relationship with our user that Vogue had never been able to have before. It had previously been quite an aloof brand, quite rightly, but this was an opportunity to interact in a much closer way as a brand.
Wow, that's terrific. Absolutely terrific. Now, with the digital side of things, is that as important as the physical for the business?
Yes, I mean, again, to repeat myself, and now like never before, because of COVID, and I know people who have, you know, had their whole brand strategy set and all of a sudden had to like completely and utterly pivot and just go, right, we're not going to actually see any human beings. This whole thing needs to be digitally led. And part of the role as well as a consultant that I tried to do, because, you know, in the old days, digital never really had a seat at the table. Brands would claim that they were interested in digital and that they wanted to be, you know, cutting edge, but very few actually had digital people in, you know, around the table making the mega decisions. And I think that now it has to be an absolute infusion of digital from start to finish. So, but it all, I mean, I like to believe that it all, you know, knits together successfully to make a successful business. It's not kind of, you know, them and us anymore, hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah, I mean, did you imagine when you started that it would transition into being such a huge part of our world now?
No. I mean, it was a job at Vogue I was offered, and I thought, oh gosh, I hardly know what the internet is, but it was a job at Vogue, so I wasn't going to turn it down. Abigail Chisholm, who led it then, was brilliantly persuasive and very clever, and I just wanted to work with her. But, you know, in the old days, I wasn't allowed to even get into fashion shows. You know, you'd ring up and say, please can I come to, you know, Matthew Williamson's show or whatever, and they'd say, who are you? And I'd say, I'm Dolly Jones from Vogue.com, and say the kind of .com under my breath. Because they wanted Vogue, but they didn't want anything to do with the internet. It was so uncool, and it was, you know, tech geeks and porn addicts and not fashionable at all. And now it's, you know, I mean, more than fashionable. It's everything.
It's everything. Now, we know you spent a long time at Vogue. Did you always want to work in fashion? I get the feeling that maybe not.
No. No, I didn't. I wanted to be a journalist. When I left university, I went to journalism college, and then I came out and I wrote to everybody every paper, every magazine on the planet, and Vogue came back first and said, come for work experience. And during my journalism course, my first assignment was to interview a celebrity or somebody at the top of their game. And I managed to get to Alexandra Shulman, who was then editing Vogue. And she was pretty extraordinary and supportive and formidable and sort of person I wanted to be. And so, yes, it started there. And then when I got to Vogue, and I thought it was just clothes, and actually it's this huge cultural phenomenon. And then I was working with GQ and Tatler and House and Garden and all of these amazing Vanity Fair. It was just, you know, it just felt supremely exciting.
No, wonderful.
But it's interesting now to leave, and I'm working with various different companies, and you know, it's lovely to be out, having been in a place for 20 years and work with such a varied set of clients. And I've just taken on a job with a charity called Advance, which supports women and children who are victims of domestic abuse. And it's made me, much as I loved my time at Conde Nast, it's made me really pleased to have left, so that I have this opportunity now to broaden my horizons, really.
Yes, absolutely. We've had a question pop up. There's a lot of fashion tech out there at the moment, some hit and a lot of miss. Do you see tech becoming a larger part of fashion and how it can help with sustainability?
I really hope so. I mean, with all of the kind of wardrobe sharing apps coming out and all of the kind of renting clothes, there is such enthusiasm and such money going into them. And I just don't think we can come back from it. I think, you know, it is difficult to get it right. But increasingly people are, and increasingly the kind of old fashioned money and old fashioned minds, you know, fashion personalities are looking in that direction as well. So I think, yeah, I mean, when it's right, it will fly. I mean, you know, if you think when Net-a-Porter first turned up, when Natalie Massenet started calling people saying, can I stock your clothes? I'm going to sell them online. And again, people were like, absolutely not. That's a ridiculous idea. And, you know, proved them pretty wrong. So I think, you know, hopefully it's all going that way.
Yeah, excellent. And on the sustainability side of things, how do you think that type of revolution, luxury brands can help their business? How can that approach help luxury brands specifically?
Well, I think with luxury brands, it's almost easier because they've got the money to do it. And turning transforming a brand into a sustainable offering is really expensive. And that's what is so difficult for brands. That's why it's so difficult to take it on. But I think people who buy into luxury brands want the ultimate luxury. And they don't want to be that feeling of pleasure from spending whatever they've spent on their handbag or whatever. They don't want that feeling of luxury to be sullied by a guilty conscience that thinking, shit, I don't know my language. I don't know.
It's fine.
Sorry. I don't know, you know, whether children were involved in the creation of this, or I don't know whether chemicals were involved in the creation of this that is just now ruining our planet. And so I was talking about it the other day in a meeting and saying, you know, the ultimate luxury is a clear conscience. And so luxury brands can offer that, and therefore people will pay for that luxury. And then also they're buying something hopefully that is incredibly high quality and will last. So that justifies any guilt you might feel about spending the money. And it feels like a true investment in terms of, you know, your own enjoyment of it, but also in you know, the future of the planet, because you're not just, you know, buying throwaway fashion that you just don't care about and, you know, will never think about again.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and I understand what you're saying, but it almost feels like fast fashion, it's going to be harder for them to, you know, change what they're about and how they're approaching the whole industry. I don't really know if it's going to go anywhere, because a lot of people can't really possibly invest.
In fast fashion, you mean, or in luxury?
They can't invest in luxury. So fast fashion is kind of here.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, that's a frightening, hopefully not truth, or something that we can change. I mean, we were driving along the motorway the other day and I saw a huge lorry full of clothes belonging to a famous fast fashion brand. And the lorry, and, you know, it had references to, you know, ethical fashion and green fashion. And it was absolutely greenwashing beyond belief. And I was saying to my husband, that's so frustrating because so many people will see that ad saying, you know, here we are and we are green, and they'll believe it. But what I like to believe is that luxury fashion has always been the influence. I mean, luxury fashion is the reason all of the clothes on the high street look the way they do, because they're, you know, they were on the catwalk a season or so before. So hopefully, if luxury fashion becomes, remains as aspirational as it is, and it becomes the kind of front runner of how to be sustainable, the customer starts to aspire to that, and therefore, okay, the cheap version that looks the same is okay, but the cheap version that looks the same but also comes with this whole layered horror of how it was created, I like to think, well, people will start to care. And, you know, I think younger generations care, don't they? I mean, the millennial generation and below, and our children, my children are 6 and 8, and they're being taught at school what's good and what's bad environmentally. So hopefully they'll grow up to, and not then, you know, wander down the high street and buy a pair of jeans for £1.50, unless they know that it was created ethically.
Yeah. Conscious consumerism, I think, is the terms for that. Tell us about EcoAge and your work with them. Quite an interesting company.
Yes, it's amazing. So a long time ago, Livia Firth came to see me at Vogue, and she wanted to blog in the early days of blogs about her journey around the world, because her husband Colin had been nominated for an Oscar. And so she was going to go on every red carpet in the world, and she was going to wear ethical fashion. And she wanted to blog about it. So I was actually thrilled, because she was very, very good at, you know, running up to Tom Cruise at parties and taking selfies with him before even selfies were a thing. And it's 10 years. And so then she'd send us the pictures, we'd put them on Vogue, traffic would be huge. And it was we were the first, I think, mainstream publication, albeit luxury, to have an ethical fashion area of the website. So that was that, and that was doing pretty well. And then in 2013, the Rana Plaza factory collapsed in Bangladesh, and we wrote about it on Vogue in the Daily News, and it got huge traction with the audience, and people really wanted to know more. And it didn't used to be the sort of conversation that we'd be having on Vogue, because Vogue is luxury and it's beautiful, and we didn't really talk about anything that was unpleasant. But it really made me realize how much the audience was engaged with this and cared about it. So we wrote about it more and more, and I went to see a talk with Livia about it and how we need to start working against this fast fashion. And I thought we should put together a new website at Conde Nast, where we could write ethical fashion stories, and that would be promoted by Vogue. We could write ethical business stories promoted by GQ, interior stories promoted by House and Garden, and we could kind of bring together all the voices of Conde Nast and put together what we were going to call the Life Report, and use Conde Nast's influence to drive the agenda of this sort of burgeoning conversation, which in those days was still, you know, tree huggers and hemp and, you know, sacking, and not cool or beautiful or aesthetically pleasing at all. But I felt that Conde Nast could push it into, you know, a new place and get it to be really engaging. And so they were on board with it. We were going to go ahead with it, but we had to try and find advertising for it before we went live. And advertisers just couldn't commit, despite wanting to. And often, you know, Unilever or Stella McCartney or all these people we spoke to were keen to get involved with it, but they didn't want to put their name to it often, not particularly Stella, because she obviously has such a good reputation, but many other people were saying, look, I don't want to claim that I'm sustainable by associating myself with this new brand, the Life Report, because people will investigate us, and if they find anything that's not completely perfect, we'll be accused of being hypocrites. But the trouble was, you know, we're all hypocrites at the moment. You know, with one hand, you're using sustainable, I don't know, kitchen towel, and with the other hand, you're chucking out more rubbish because it's locked down and you haven't had a chance to do it, you know, more sensibly. So if we collectively can admit that we're all trying to do this and trying to drive change without being frightened to admit where it's challenging, then that's really the only way that we can get this whole thing moving and going in the right direction. Anyway, you know, it was too much for Conde Nast at that stage. It wasn't successful. We shelved it as a project, and it was one of the reasons I thought, I don't know that I want to be here anymore. It's been a long time, and I've got other stuff. I think I've got other stuff on my agenda. So I left then I think I left on a Friday, and literally 2 days later, I got a message on Instagram from Livia saying, "I've got an idea." So I went along, and they had a kind of holding page of a website at EcoAge, and she'd started off as a consultancy of just how to help businesses become more sustainable. So we built a proper website for her and set it up as a kind of content platform to drive the agenda, basically doing what we were trying to do at Conde Nast, but doing it under the title of EcoAge, which was brilliant because it was so much more. It was Livia's conversation. I mean, she has led that conversation since the beginning. So it was really thrilling. I mean, it was really satisfying, and it's doing really well now.
Oh, very, very exciting. Very exciting. Thank you. So in the digital age, do you think print will always have a place?
I mean, yes, depending on the title.
Okay.
Depending on the title. I think, it's really, really hard for print magazines, and so many of them have fallen by the wayside. And it's really tragic because there are so many unbelievably talented people, not just the journalists, but the creatives putting them together. It's a question Vogue is asked all the time, and certainly I was asked all the time at Vogue because I was running the digital, so everyone thought I was trying to kind of gazump the print. But people who wanted to be on Vogue, the holy grail was to be in print. And if you look at what Vogue is doing now under Edward Enninful, it is so iconic. Every issue, whether it was the key workers issue in the summer or the way he hired Miss Anne Harriman to do the September issue, like they're moments in themselves. And so, yeah, I mean, they're selling out again and again and again. I saw Miss Anne the other day, and he said, just each issue sells out faster than the last because they're such, they feel like pieces of history. So I think if you're Enninful, you're in a pretty safe spot. But yeah, it's a hard industry.
It is very hard. Do you think this pandemic, although it is horrible, do you think that it's driving a reset movement within fashion?
Yes. I think it's forcing people to have a reset. There's a really wonderful film on the London Fashion Week website starring Christopher Kane, talking about his latest collection. And it's amazing. I mean, I've always been slightly obsessed with him. He's amazing. He was always so brilliant. All his shows were so amazing and so completely different to everybody else, and sort of moved the whole thing in a different direction each season. But this film is, what he was doing in lockdown, and he's been painting, and it so shows and reveals his genius as an artist, which we've only ever seen manifested in clothes. And now there are huge canvases all over his studio. And then for this collection, he hasn't done a full collection because he doesn't feel it's right or appropriate, and partly because of COVID, partly because of the sustainability angle. But a few, hand painted Duchess satin dresses painted in the same way, or screen printed even with the painting beside them. And so, yes, it's a reset, but it's almost like it's really helped him creatively, just really discover what his true aesthetic is. So I think it's, as you say, this pandemic is horrific. In that one sense, it's going to have some artistic positives, I think, I hope.
Very, very positive, yes. What's your take on the digital fashion week? Did you enjoy those?
I did. I mean, it's so challenging for me, having always been in digital. We were always saying, come on guys, you can do something good digitally. Being people forced to do that was amazing to see how they took it on. And also, in this world at the moment where everyone's saying and it is so hard for creatives because, where's the work going? Because everybody's in lockdown pretty much. It was a chance for them to show off their wares and show off their talents. And from, set designs to clothing to sound, it was really spectacular. So people, I was really pleased that it went well for them. I hope it has the right effect.
Yes, and continues. I love being front row in at home.
Yes, it makes the fashion shows, I mean, I haven't been to one for a few years now, but it makes them seem really old-fashioned, and the hierarchy of who's in the front row and who's not, and sort of politics of that, it does seem quite old-fashioned, that whole thing. Whether or not that will go back to normal, I kind of can't imagine it.
No, a good combination would be good.
Yeah,
be great.
Yeah.
Now, you have a book due to be published next year. If you could please share a bit about that and what we can expect.
Thanks. Yes, we just decided to confirm the title today with Harper Collins, my publisher. And it is, I've always wanted to write a book, and I always wanted to write a novel, but I haven't got there. This is non-fiction. And it comes from when I was first breastfeeding my little boy, who's now 8, in the middle of the night, thinking I loved my career and it was going so well, and now I had a little baby and I wanted to go back to work, but would it somehow damage him if I did? Would it damage me? Well, like, how was I going to keep going in the same sort of trajectory that I was enjoying with my career? And so then I tried to find books about it that would sort of help me and galvanize me. And I could find books that were very angry about how unfair it is for women, which is absolutely right in a million ways and totally true and fair, but didn't have that kind of galvanizing effect. It made me feel a bit gloomy. Or I could find books that helped you decide how to go about what to wear, how to feel energized and thin enough and all that kind of stuff, which wasn't really my vibe. And so then and I'm sure there are millions of other books. I didn't read that many of them. I just couldn't find this one. So I'm writing it. And it's involving interviewing as many women as I can in as many different professions as I can, from taxi drivers to pilots to doctors to actresses to everybody you can think of, about their experience of going back to work after having a baby, and basically how they're doing it, and all the funny things that have happened, and the things where they've cried laughing, and the times when they've cried out of frustration or just general horror. Trying to be funny, trying to be cheerful, but very realistic. So I've spoken to child psychologists and employment lawyers, and so that hopefully when the next generation of women are breastfeeding their baby at night thinking, how am I going to do this? They've got hundreds of women giving them their experience. So we're calling it the ladder down. So it's kind of the old generation of women handing down to the next generation of how-tos, really.
Oh, that's amazing. Look
Thanks.
forward to seeing that. Yes. Yes. But that was very, very quick. And I thank you very much for spending this time with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
No problem. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Join us again next week. Our guest will be PR strategist Amanda Fitzgerald. Until then, thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.